Welcome back to the Star Citizen Academy. I'm Captain Katarn. By now you've already picked your starter ship and you know how to upgrade it, rent it, melt it, juggle store credit, and play the system without lighting your wallet on fire. But now there's a much bigger question staring you in the face. Which place should you choose as your starting location? Having an idea of the layout of the verse is important and will inform your gameplay, so let's dive into it. The goal of this video is simple. By the end of it, you should know which system fits how you want to play. If you're brand new, I'll say this up front. Stanton is still the safest place to start. It's my recommendation for almost everyone. Full stop. But that doesn't mean the other options aren't worth understanding. I recommend watching until the end because you'll end up visiting all of these places on your journey. Right now, there are three very distinct starting vibes. Stanton, the corporate-owned, mostly lawful safety net. Pyro, which is lawless, hostile, and built around high risk and high reward. And Nyx, specifically Levski on Delamar, which is returned as an independent enclave that sits somewhere between order and chaos. If you're worried about choosing wrong, don't be. You can change your home location every patch. This is a starting point, not a permanent commitment. Your starting hangar is fully persistent. Anything you drop there stays there. Gear, decorations, vehicles, all of it. Everywhere else you land, you're given a temporary hangar that remembers item placement while you're there, but once you leave, anything you didn't take with you gets packed into local inventory. Think owning versus renting. Stanton is akin to a corporate playground where each planet is owned by a mega corporation with its own security forces and personality. Each major landing zone feels very different, but they all operate under the same umbrella of corporate control and managed commerce. There are 4 major planetary systems in Stanton, each with their own cluster of moons. Missions you undertake for the factions that control each planet will be spread out around the planet, and various moons in their jurisdiction. All of the planets have a breathable atmosphere, but the moons mostly do not. You'll need to be prepared for that if you end up landing on one. Let's start with New Babbage on the planet MicroTech. New Babbage feels like an Apple store collided with a ski resort. It's a sprawling city built out of glass and brushed metal. And personally, I love the architecture. It's clean, modern, and aggressively corporate in a way that feels intentional. Lore-wise, MicroTech is the poster child for high-tech consumer innovation in the UEE, and New Babbage is its showroom floor. Think Apple and Microsoft and every other tech company if they made it to the year 2956. New Babbage is one of those places that feels perfect the first time you see it and slowly reveals its trade-offs the longer you live there. It is, without question, one of the most visually impressive landing zones in the game. The glass, the lighting, the snow, it all sells this idea that MicroTech is the future done right. The Commons is where most new players naturally gravitate. It's packed with the things you actually need early on. Clothing, food, multi-tools, basic weapons, all within a transit shuttle ride. That ride also sells the scale of the city and visually reinforces just how big Star Citizen is trying to be. Outside the city, MicroTech is actively hostile. The snowy landscape is more than a pretty setting. Star Citizen simulates temperature, exposure, and weather. The atmosphere is breathable, but MicroTech will kill you if you treat it casually. Blizzards roll in fast, visibility drops to nothing, and without proper gear you'll freeze to death in minutes. The upside is that you rarely need to go outside at all. The city is fully explorable internally, and that makes New Babbage one of the safest choices for players who want immersion without dealing with the elements. In contrast, all of the other landing zones in Stanton are open air. Ground vehicle access is another huge perk. New Babbage has a true surface exit, which makes it ideal if you enjoy rovers, hover bikes, or just messing around planetside. There's only one other landing zone that lets you spawn ground vehicles without having to go to another remote location somewhere else on the planet. That can be a huge time savings. Now let's talk about the other half of living at New Babbage, because if you stay here long enough, you're eventually going to stop living on the planet at all. Above MicroTech sits Port Tressler, the geosynchronous orbital station for the planet. Every major landing zone in Stanton has one of these, and understanding how they work changes how you play Star Citizen. These stations orbit directly above their planet at a fixed position, meaning they're always aligned, always accessible, and only a short quantum jump away. They act as the planet's space-based counterpart, and for many players, they eventually become the real home base. Compared to New Babbage below, you can spawn ships faster, get into space almost immediately, and completely avoid the long atmospheric climb. There's stores that have some components, ammo, and armor to get you moving as well. If you're logging in for shorter sessions or chaining contracts together, that time savings adds up fast. You can set your medical spawn at Port Tressler, keep your persistent storage planet side at New Babbage, and treat the station as your operational hub. That split is intentional. Cities are for shopping, storage, and world building. Stations are for playing the game efficiently. Once that clicks, a lot of early frustration about how long things take in Star Citizen disappears. Port Tressler also introduces you to the rhythm of station life, which becomes more important as the universe expands. All of the major system stations like Port Tressler have the same facilities with a different layout and exterior model. The jump point stations all mirror each other, as do most of the Lagrange Point stations. For New Babbage specifically, Port Tressler solves the city's biggest weakness. You still get access to MicroTech's shopping, contracts, and ground gameplay when you need it, but you're no longer paying the time tax every time you want to leave the planet. And that's probably the takeaway. The real cost of New Babbage and most Stanton starting locations is time. The train ride to the spaceport isn't unbearable, but it's long enough that you feel it. New Babbage is best suited for players who value atmosphere, stability, and structure. If you like things clean, predictable, and aesthetically pleasing, this place feels like home. If you're impatient, constantly bouncing between activities, or allergic to commute time, the charm wears off faster than you'd expect. Loreville is not meant to be comfortable. That's the point. If New Babbage is corporate optimism, Loreville is the reality of corporate consequence. This city exists to remind you who actually runs Stanton, and it does that by making sure you feel small, dirty, and constantly under surveillance at all times. It also sits beneath a dense atmosphere that rains often. The planet is owned outright by Hurston Dynamics, and unlike the other megacorps, Hurston doesn't pretend to be your friend. They're arms dealers, first and foremost, creating some of the best weapons in the verse. This is old money, old industry, and old attitudes. The air is thick, the skyline is smothered in smog, and the city feels like it was built to extract labor first and tolerate people second. Visually, Loreville feels straight out of an 80s dystopian future. Blade Runner-inspired brutalist architecture, endless pipes, and industrial scaffolding stretching off into the haze. It's oppressive by design. You're not here to admire the skyline, you're here to work, trade, and move on. That tone carries directly into how the city functions. Tisa Spaceport is one of the most visually distinctive spaceports in the game, with its massive control tower hovering above the landing pads. I'd say it's inspired by the Orison signal tower in Andor, but this one has been here for years before Andor was written or filmed. Once you leave the hangar and head into the city proper, Loreville is a huge sprawling maze. Trains are not optional here, you'll be riding them constantly to move around. The city is split into multiple zones, and transiting between them takes time. From a gameplay perspective, Loreville's biggest advantage is location. Hurston sits near the center of Stanton, which makes it excellent for trading, hauling, and logistics. You're rarely far from anything important. For players who want to move cargo, run contracts efficiently, or operate across the system without long quantum jumps, this matters a lot. Everest Harbor sits above Hurston, and a lot of experienced players choose to live there instead of in the city itself, as we covered previously. Loreville is best suited for players who don't mind the setting, who value efficiency over aesthetics, and who want to operate at the center of the system. If you're the kind of player who enjoys industry, hauling, and long-term planning, Loreville makes sense in a way that other cities don't. If New Babbage feels curated and Loreville feels oppressive, Area 18 feels functional. This is corporate density turned up to maximum. Neon lights, industrial smog, endless verticality, and a skyline that never really ends. ArcCorp paved the planet centuries ago, and Area 18 is one of the few places where people still pretend that's normal. The vibe here is pure Coruscant meets cyberpunk. Think Night City filtered through Star Citizen's clean UI language. Everything glows, everything hums, and everything feels busy even when it isn't. There's a sense of motion to Area 18 that never fully shuts off, and for a lot of players, that energy makes it feel alive in a way other cities don't. Lore-wise, ArcCorp is all about manufacturing, logistics, and scale. Unlike Loreville, ArcCorp doesn't lean into brutality, it leans into efficiency. You're a cog here, but at least the machine runs smoothly. From a gameplay perspective, Area 18 is easily the most beginner-friendly city to navigate. Riker Memorial Spaceport is compact, readable, and well-connected. You're not dealing with sprawling train networks or layered transit systems. There's one route from the spaceport to Area 18's main district. The city layout makes sense quickly, which is great when you're still learning where things are and how long it takes to get anywhere. Most of the major shops you care about are here. Ships, components, armor, clothing. It's all clustered tightly enough that you're rarely bouncing between districts just to get set up. Compared to other cities, Area 18 respects your time. Above ArcCorp sits Bikini Point. Area 18 gives you easy access to gear and infrastructure, while Bikini Point handles the day-to-day grind of flying, contracts, and movement. Area 18 is ideal for players who value efficiency, accessibility, and a low-friction learning curve. If you want to get in, gear up, run missions, and log out without fighting the city every step of the way, this is one of the best starting locations in the game. Imagine if you took the idea of Cloud City from The Empire Strikes Back and then brought it into a game world in a non-IP infringing way. Sprinkle in pink and purple clouds, avenues lined with cherry trees that never stop blooming, and lush gardens that whisper tranquility into the wind. If you did all that, you'd have Orison, which is my starting location of choice and the one I'm going to use as the hub for the video tutorial series going forward. I absolutely love this city, and you might as well. Orison is still the most visually striking place you can choose to start, but it's no longer the self-inflicted time sink it used to be, which is a major win. The first impression hasn't changed. Floating platforms suspended above a gas giant, soft pink clouds rolling endlessly beneath you, calm music playing in the background, like the game wants you to breathe a little slower. Orison feels hopeful in a universe that often doesn't. It's clean, bright, and intentionally uplifting in a way no other landing zone really attempts. Crusader Industries built Orison as a statement. This is what the future looks like when technology, money, and idealism align, and visually, it absolutely succeeds. For new players especially, Orison sells the fantasy harder than any other city in Stanton. From a gameplay perspective, Orison remains one of the strongest shopping hubs in Stanton. Cousin Crow's is still the best place in the system to buy ship components, and that alone makes Orison relevant long after you stop living here. If you care about tuning ships, optimizing loadouts, or squeezing performance out of your build, you'll be passing through Crusader space regularly. The habitation areas, centered around the green circle, are clean, readable, and easy to navigate. Compared to Loreville's sprawl or New Babbage's verticality, Orison feels deliberately human-scaled. It's one of the easiest cities to learn, with dedicated shuttle rides directly where you want to go. The Voyager Bar is a place I go to get some of the B-roll I use in my videos. It's akin to Star Citizen's version of Konpeki Plaza's bar in Cyberpunk 2077. There are great views, and with a quick walkthrough, you can judge the server cluster performance based on how the NPCs are responding. Below there's Kelto, which is like your local 7-Eleven mixed with your favorite gun store. They sell everything from club sandwiches to fully automatic weapons, which always gets a chuckle out of me. Above Crusader sits Seraphim Station, the geosynchronous station for Orison. It's a replacement for the original space station that Star Citizen launched with, Port Olisar. I spend more time on this station than probably any other in the game. Orison is best suited for players who value aesthetics, immersion, and a strong sense of place, with quicker access to the jump points into Pyro and Nyx than the rest of the system. For me, that makes it home. Up to now, we've been talking about planets, cities, and orbital stations as places you might actually live. Lagrange Point stations are something different. These stations are deep space work sites. Lagrange Points are stable gravitational positions between a planet and its star, and in Star Citizen they sit inside large nebula fields filled with asteroids, wrecks, and industrial opportunities. If you're mining, salvaging, or hauling resources, you're going to spend time here whether you plan to or not. This is where a lot of the game's industrial content lives. Many Lagrange stations also support refining and cargo operations. All L1 stations are guaranteed to have refinery decks, which makes them the backbone of the mining loop. You extract ore in the surrounding fields, refine it locally, and then move the finished product to market. That tight loop is intentional. It minimizes travel time and keeps industrial gameplay focused. From a layout perspective, Lagrange stations are built for efficiency, compact interiors, direct access to services, and very little wasted space. You're not navigating malls or train systems here. You're docking, unloading, refining, and moving on. That's why most players don't choose Lagrange stations as a permanent home. There's limited shopping and not much reason to log out here unless you're deep into an industrial loop. For most players, Lagrange points are somewhere you work, not somewhere you live. Let's switch gears and talk about the next star system, Pyro. If Stanton is corporate control and managed commerce, Pyro is what happens when that control collapses and nothing meaningful replaces it. The system is intentionally hostile. The POIs are spaced far enough apart that running out of fuel isn't hard to do if you aren't careful. Everything about how it's set up is supposed to be dangerous. There are no active comm arrays in Pyro. Crimes aren't automatically reported. There's no reliable law enforcement response. If someone attacks you, that's between you and them. Whatever happens next is resolved by skill, preparation, or numbers, not by the system stepping in. On top of that, Pyro is unstable. They removed the solar flares that fried ships early in the concept, and I hope eventually they return with full-on repair gameplay. All of this is why Pyro is not a recommended starting system for new players, even though the game technically allows it. You can start here. You just probably shouldn't. Unlike Stanton, Pyro stations aren't neutral infrastructure. They're controlled by gangs, and that control is enforced through reputation and violence rather than law. One of the first stations most players encounter is Checkmate Station, orbiting Monox, also known as Pyro 2. This station feels like a repurposed industrial platform that never stopped being dangerous. Lighting is poor, everything is falling apart, and the atmosphere is tense the moment you arrive. Each of the 3 major stations in Pyro has PvP contested zones, where the moment you step out of the airlock, it's weapons free. There are decent rewards inside, and they are rarely empty. If you love the thrill of PvP, this is where you can get your fix, and maybe pick up a shiny new ship along the way. Obituary Station, orbiting Bloom on Pyro 3, is often considered the least hostile option in the system, and that's saying very little. Bloom has a breathable atmosphere, which already makes it feel less punishing than most of the other Pyro locations. Other than that, the station's internal layout is nearly identical to Checkmate. Then there's Ruin Station. Ruin is the center of gravity for Pyro. High traffic, contested zones, and constant player interaction make it the most dangerous and most interesting station in the system. This is where competitive collection-based ship missions tend to pull players together, and where open conflict is common. The marketplace is massive, chaotic, and styled like something pulled straight out of Mad Max. Unlike Stanton, you won't find everything you could want here. Stations have very limited resources and goods to sell to players. Ruin has the most selection by far, but it's still lacking compared to the rest of the galaxy. Despite all of that, Pyro exists for a reason. The system is rich in combat opportunities for players that want to take advantage of that. The natural resources are valuable, and when crafting comes into the game, likely some of the best spawns in the verse. Salvage opportunities are plentiful here too. This is where experienced groups run coordinated operations using area denial tactics to control territory temporarily. Hell, I've been killed in Pyro trying to go to an NPC village more times than I can remember. It's shoot first, and Han Solo would love it. One thing that Pyro does offer is quick access from habitation to shops, then to your ship. Unlike the landing zones in Stanton, everything is self-contained. The trade-off is that you're going to spend a lot of time in quantum travel, especially if your destination isn't in the system and still a bunch of time even if it is. Pyro's huge compared to everything else. The jump points to Stanton and Nyx are so far apart it's not uncommon to need 15 minutes to travel to them and then go through the wormholes. Here's the honest recommendation. Don't start in Pyro unless you know exactly why you're doing it. If you're part of a group, running a Zero to Hero challenge, or intentionally looking for high-risk PvP adjacent gameplay, Pyro can be incredible. If you're brand new, learning flight, controls, and systems, Pyro will feel punishing and random in ways that aren't educational. Most players are better served learning the game in Stanton, understanding industry through Lagrange Points, and then choosing when to step into Pyro on their own terms. Because once you're in Pyro, the game stops holding your hand entirely. Located in the Nyx system on the massive asteroid Delamar, Levski is not part of the UEE, and it's not lawless either. It's independent, organized, and intentionally outside corporate control. If Pyro is chaos and Stanton is corporate order, Levski is what happens when people decide they want neither of those things. It's really a nod to the brown coats from Firefly, and that influence is felt in the design aesthetic within. The city itself is carved directly into the rock of the asteroid. Everything is underground, heavy, and utilitarian. Brutalist architecture, exposed stone, industrial lighting. It feels like a place that was built to survive first and look good, never. That grounded, lived-in quality is exactly why some players fall in love with it. Levski doesn't feel hostile, but it also doesn't feel safe in the way Stanton does. Security exists, but it's local and pragmatic rather than ideological. You're not being watched by a megacorp, and you're not relying on gangs to keep the peace. The result is a neutral zone that attracts players who don't fit cleanly into either extreme. At the heart of the city is the Grand Barter, a sprawling bazaar that immediately sets Levski apart from other landing zones. This is one of the few places in the game where independent gear and non-corporate equipment actually feels appropriate. It's messy, crowded, and a little rough around the edges, but combined it really works to create the appropriate feeling of an unregulated marketplace. Cafe Musan is as Firefly-inspired as it gets, with an Eastern style that blends into the Star Citizen aesthetic. The sign itself is a not-so-subtle wink to the show's fans. Visually, the most striking feature is the borehole, a massive mining pit that drops straight down through the center of the city. It reinforces what Levski is at its core. This is a working settlement built around extraction and self-sufficiency, and nothing that can be used is wasted. From a gameplay standpoint, Levski's biggest strength is neutrality. Players with crime stats can operate here without being shot on sight, but the environment never feels as volatile as Pyro. That makes it a natural refuge for players who want to operate outside the UEE without committing to constant PvP. It's especially attractive to solo players and small groups who value independence over profit maximization. The downside is isolation. Nyx is not centrally located, and travel times to Stanton or Pyro are longer, but not nearly as long as it is from Pyro. Most large-scale activities still happen elsewhere, and as the system continues to build out, Levski often feels like a staging point rather than a destination. You live here because you want the vibe and the neutrality, not because it's the most efficient place to operate. Throughout 2026, Nyx will continue to grow and become a system that is as fleshed out as the others. Until then, you're probably better off starting in Stanton because the easy money is in the rookie cargo missions. Having to fly a starter ship through the wormhole then to a planet in Stanton adds even more time to something that can be done in a handful of minutes if started elsewhere. Levski is best suited for players who want a sense of identity without corporate oversight, who enjoy a slower, more deliberate pace, and who don't mind being a little off the main highway of the verse. It's not flashy, it's not optimized, and it's not trying to sell you anything. For some people, that's exactly the point. At this point, the choice should feel a lot less overwhelming. In the next episode, we're finally getting into the game for real. I'll walk you through graphics settings, control settings, and we'll look at how your hangar and ships work. If this video helped you, then do me a favor. Please like the video and share it with a friend that's new to Star Citizen. Let me know in the comments where you decided to start and why. I'm always interested in hearing your story, and I always read all of them. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the verse.